The meeting that kept the West on the edge of seats is now yielding results on the expected lines. Beyond the photo ops and camaraderie, the real meat of the meetings dropped from the Russia-China joint statement. Russia and China have expressed grave concerns over the current state of international security, attributing rising global and regional conflicts to the actions of the United States, NATO, and their allies. The statement highlights an increase in strategic risks and instability, particularly among nuclear powers. Reaffirming their commitment to the joint statement of the leaders of the 5 nuclear weapon states on preventing nuclear war and arms race, dated January 3, 2022, both Russia and China emphasized the importance of adhering to its provisions. They reiterated that a nuclear war cannot be won and should never be fought, urging all nuclear-armed states to uphold global strategic stability and avoid encroaching on each other's vital interests. The statement criticizes the expansion of military alliances and the deployment of military infrastructure near the borders of nuclear powers. It underscores the need to address the root causes of security contradictions to prevent direct military confrontations between nuclear-armed states. A significant portion of the statement is dedicated to condemning U.S. actions that, according to Russia and China, disrupt the strategic balance and aim for a decisive military advantage. These actions include the creation of a global missile defense system, the deployment of its elements in various regions and space, and the buildup of high-precision, non-nuclear weapons. The joint statement also highlights NATO's joint nuclear missions in Europe and the extended nuclear deterrence involving U.S. allies. Russia and China expressed particular concern over the development of military infrastructure in Australia, which they argue supports U.S. and U.K. nuclear forces. Additionally, the statement criticizes the cooperation program for constructing nuclear submarines between the U.S., U.K., and Australia, and the deployment plans for ground-based intermediate-range and shorter-range missiles in the Asia-Pacific and European regions. The statement strongly condemns the U.S. for transferring ground-based missile systems to these regions under the guise of joint exercises with allies, which Russia and China perceive as explicitly anti-Russian and anti-Chinese. The parties expressed deep concern over Washington's intentions to establish a permanent presence of these missile systems globally, viewing these actions as a direct threat to their security.
It is fundamentally important that the relations of Russia and China are not conjunctural and not aiming against anyone. Our cooperation in global affairs is one of the main stabilizing factors at the international scene today. Together, we stand for the principles of fairness and democratic world order.
The joint statement also addressed the need for strict adherence to the Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, and Stockpiling of Bacteriological, Biological Substances, and Toxin Weapons, BTWC. Russia and China called for the institutionalization of the BTWC and the adoption of a legally binding protocol with an effective verification mechanism. They demanded that the U.S. cease its military biological activities, which they claim threaten the security of other states and regions. The Russian side positively assessed China's objective and unbiased position on the Ukrainian issue, acknowledging China's readiness to play a constructive role in the political and diplomatic settlement of the crisis. Both nations emphasized the need to resolve the conflict based on the UN Charter, underscoring dialogue as the optimal solution. Russia and China called for halting actions that prolong hostilities and escalate the conflict, warning against its potential to become uncontrollable. They stressed the importance of addressing the root causes of the Ukrainian crisis and adhering to the principle of indivisible security, which considers the legitimate security concerns of all countries.
Both sides agreed that a political solution to the Ukraine crisis is the right direction. China's position on this issue has been consistent and clear. This includes abiding by the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter, respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries, and respecting the reasonable security concerns of all parties, and building a balanced, effective, and sustainable new security framework. China hopes for the early return of Europe to peace and stability, and will continue to play a constructive role toward this.
In response to the joint statement, the White House and the State Department rejected Russia and China's call for a peaceful solution, pointing to China's support for Russia in the conflict.
So I know that there was a statement, obviously that was a joint statement that was put out. Look, we don't see anything new here. I will reiterate what I said yesterday, which was we find it unacceptable that Chinese companies are helping Putin wage this war against Ukraine. We've been very clear about that. And if China purports to support peace in Europe, it cannot continue to fuel the biggest threat of the European security. And that's not just coming from us. It's coming from NATO, the EU, the G7 partners. They've put out a statement about this as well. So, look, the statement is nothing new. It's more of the same, and we've been very clear where we stand on this.
When pressed about the anti-American tone of the joint statement, Jean-Pierre reiterated,
Look, we don't see anything new with this. We've seen this before. I get the point that you're making. We've seen this type of bilateral statement from those two countries. We have been very clear about this, and it's not just us. You've heard from the EU, you've heard from the G7 partners, you've heard from NATO, look, we have been all of the allies and partners that I just mentioned. We've been very clear on making sure that we do everything that we can to give the brave people of Ukraine who are fighting Putin's aggression the security assistance that they need.
State Department Principal Deputy Spokesman Vedant Patel echoed these sentiments, emphasizing that China cannot maintain strong ties with Europe while supporting Russia.
First is that the People's Republic of China cannot have its cake and eat it too. You can't have it both ways. You can't want to have good, further, stronger, deepened relationships with Europe and other countries while simultaneously continuing to fuel the biggest threat to European security in a long time.
Patel also addressed the proposed solutions for the Ukrainian conflict, saying the most peaceful solution is for Russia to leave Ukraine.
From our point of view, the solution is simple. The Russian Federation can just leave Ukraine. It can leave the territories that it's in Ukraine. It can leave Crimea, and we'll have our peaceful solution. But time and time again, President Putin and the Russian Federation has indicated that they are not interested in doing that.
In response to what they describe as Washington's destructive and hostile course, Russia and China pledged to increase their cooperation and coordination to counter the US's dual containment strategy targeting their countries. This marks a significant step in the deepening of their strategic partnership against perceived Western aggression. joint statement by Russia and China, coupled with the strong response from the US, underscores the growing rift between these major powers. It highlights escalating tensions and the potential for increased military and strategic competition, raising concerns about the future of global security and stability.